TFA fam, welcome back in. Today we're going to be discussing some of our favorite wide receivers you have to play this week. So let's go ahead and get it started. Now, this week is going to be a little rough because we do have some pretty quality players on bye this week. So
Yeah.
normally at wide receiver one are at wide receiver one this week and higher because, that's where we're at because of all the wide receivers are on bye. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So first off, Stephon Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, Adam Thielen, Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr., and Brandon Ayuk wrapping up the top 12 wide receivers this week. Cody, hit us with the good stuff.
So just want to start with saying with Jamar Chase, we need to monitor what's going to happen with him. The quotes coming from Chase himself don't sound too promising. And on a week, like you're saying, where we're already missing guys like Tyreek, AJ Brown, Cooper Kupp, no Chase would be a big hit, but we'll need to see how the practice reports shake out the rest of the week. Speaking of the Bengals and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins had his best performance since week 2, catching 8 of 9 targets for 110 yards. The Houston Texans have quietly allowed the third fewest half PPR points per game to wide receivers on the year, but Burrow looks back to his old self, and this game has the second highest point total of the week, which is currently sitting at 48 right now. So you're firing him up. Obviously, if Chase is out, he gets bumped up a little bit higher. Then on the flip side of that, this is also not a great matchup for Nico Collins and Tank Dell, but CJ Stroud looks like the truth. And they are 6.5 point underdogs in this one. They don't have a run game worth mentioning. So Collins and Dell are both going to be strong plays this week. And lastly, for the wide receiver ones, Chris Olave, someone who's been pretty disappointing for the majority of this year, but he did find the end zone last week, and he was used on some different routes in some different ways. So that's good to see. Now he gets a matchup against the Vikings, who are allowing the ninth most half PPR points per game to the position. His usage metrics are still strong as well. He is 7th in overall just raw targets, 18th in target share. He is 1st in deep targets, 2nd in total air yards, and tied for 12th in air yard share. So it kind of feels like he's one of these receivers, we've talked about, like Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle, who's overdue for a blow-up game. I feel like that could be it this week against the Vikings.
Yeah, and I'll just mention DK Metcalf gets a great matchup this week. He's been kind of disappointing as well this year, and so is Geno Smith for that matter. Kind of really fallen back to earth a little bit from where they were at last year, but this feels like a get right spot because the Washington Commanders have allowed the third most receiving yards to wide receivers on the season. So I really do like DK Metcalf this week as kind of a pretty big bounce back spot for him. Let's go ahead and move over to the wide receiver twos, and they are as follows: Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk, Tank Dell, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson, Davante Adams, and Tyler Lockett. So, Cody, wide receiver twos.
Yeah, just to continue talking about what you were mentioning with DK Metcalf, I was kind of mentioning Metcalf and Lockett here, lumping them together among the wide receiver twos, because if there was ever a bounce back spot, it would be here with Seattle getting a home matchup against the Commanders. They're allowing the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks and the third most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. We know Sam Howell is going to drop back 40 plus times this game. So as long as Seattle can hold up their end of the deal, this looks like it's going to be a shootout. I think the total is sitting around like 46.5 in this one. So I'm with you there. I do like both of those wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins is in another good spot here. The Tampa secondary has just been lit up over the past several weeks. They are now allowing the second most half PPR points per game to wide receivers. And unless they come out and just like completely change how they've been going about like dictating their coverage in the secondary, it's going to be another strong spot here for D-Hop, coming off an 11 target game from Will Levis, who was just named the starting quarterback going forward. I did not think that Mike Vrabel was going to do that. He did it. If you saw any of the clips, he didn't like exactly seem like pumped about it either. So I don't know if that call was coming from him or not, but regardless, it's going to be Will Levis going forward in a nice matchup here against Tampa Bay. So D-Hop, you can plug him in. In that same game, on the flip side, the Titans are allowing the 8th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. So you're also firing up Mike Evans and Chris Godwin if you have them as well. Christian Kirk, it does not sound good for Zay Jones. And if he's out, this is setting up to be another Christian Kirk over Calvin Ridley type of week. The 49ers slot corner Isaiah Oliver has allowed the 4th most yards from the slot. This game is sitting at a 46.5 total. The Jags are 3-point home underdogs, and San Fran is allowing the sixth most half PPR points per game to opposing whiteouts, which is definitely not something I had on my NFL bingo card going into this year. So those are the wide receiver twos that I like for the week.
Yeah, I just want to hit on really quickly Davante Adams. I have no faith in him. I actually almost thought about putting him outside the top 36, and it's mainly because we have seen this Jets defense just absolutely shut down almost every single offense, and we're talking about great offenses like the Chiefs. We just saw the Chargers get shut down. They shut down the Bills. Like they have done an excellent job against most every offense they played, and so I have no faith whatsoever that Aiden O'Connell is going to be able to support Davante Adams in this game. So I obviously you're probably playing Davante Adams if you have him, but I have very limited expectations. I have him as a wide receiver 3, and I don't even love that. So, anyways, let's go ahead and move over to the wide receiver 3s here. Jordan Addison, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, Marquise Brown, Gabe Davis, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Christian Watson, Demario Douglas, and Zay Flowers barely makes the cut. First off, I just want to say this. What in the hell is going on with George Pickens? He cleared his entire Instagram, does the whole diva thing, says free me. And then you have Mike Tomlin to say today that said he's just a pebble in his shoe. And so I'm like, okay, like what is going on here with that? Like, I get it that he I guess there was all this hubbub last week about how he walked off whenever Deontay Johnson scored his touchdown. And it seemed like he was all that enthused and he was upset. Like, I don't really understand what's going on here.
Yeah, the pebble in the shoe comment on its own definitely does not look great, but he did expand upon that a little bit. He actually said that he actually approves and he likes it that Pickens wants to be part of the success. And I think that was kind of, depending on how you read that, it was taken out of a little bit of context. He kind of meant it in the sense of like it's not that big of an issue. Like it's a small issue. So it is weird, man. The whole diva thing, and then the picture that came out after that too, with him just like sitting on the sideline, just like sulking, basically, like you said, after Deontay Johnson scored that touchdown. And here's the other thing: drag your second foot, and this isn't a problem, and you score your touchdown. Like I don't like if you look at the still shot of like when he caught it and where that back foot was and how he didn't get that second foot in is amazing, but. He ends up being a wide receiver 3 this week. Not a fantastic matchup, not a bad one either. But I don't know. Maybe it's a squeaky wheel type narrative this week. But Deontay Johnson has come back and, over the past 2 games is reasserting himself as the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. But some of the other guys I mentioned here among the wide receiver 3s, the Cardinals look like they're getting Kyler Murray back this week. And despite the ugliness of that situation in Arizona, Marquise Brown is a wide receiver 3 in a points per game basis on the season so far. This sets up to obviously be a massive upgrade for him. So if you've been holding on this long, he's worthy of a wide receiver 3 flex type play, depending on your league setup. This is not a great matchup whatsoever for Amari Cooper with Cleveland going up against Baltimore, but he's quietly 6th in air yard share among wide receivers and also is 6th in average depth of target. So he's fine as a flex type play this week. I don't love it, but like we've been mentioning, these bye weeks are brutal as far as wide receiver rankings go. And then Jahan Dotson has finished as a wide receiver 1 in back-to-back weeks with Curtis Samuel out. Did not practice at all last week with his toe injury. So if he's forced to miss again, he's a really intriguing option here in week 10.
Yeah, and I'll just say really quickly, Zay Flowers, I'm kind of out on, and I've kind of been out on him for the last couple of weeks. Where I think it's taken a little bit of time, but it's just the way they utilize him. 31% of his targets he sees are on design screens, so like that's basically how they're utilizing him. He's basically just a gadget type player and really limits his ceiling because he has to either have some yak and rip one off, which he hasn't been able to do, or that's about it. So like I just don't think he has that high of a ceiling. And in PPR formats, I think he's fine, especially with the amount of players that are on some of the players that are on bye this week. But I just don't love it. I don't think he's somebody that you have to force in there and play. So I'm not really all that excited about that. So Cody, is there any wide receivers outside of the top 36 you want to talk about?
Yeah, we mentioned this Washington-Seattle matchup from a couple different angles already. So I do just want to say Jackson Smith and Jigba. He has seen his participation and his usage increase since Seattle has come out of their bye week. So again, if we get this shootout and Seattle is forced into more of a passing type script, Jackson Smith and Jigba can be a strong option here that we currently have outside of our top 36. Khalil Shakir for Buffalo. He doesn't have the ceiling that Gabe Davis has, but he is certainly a lot safer. He does not have that zero. Kind of seems like he actually has a floor here. We've seen him and his usage increase with Dawson Knox going down and Buffalo getting away from some of those two tight end sets, which has kind of forced Shakir in. So I think in full PPR leagues, you feel a little bit better about him. Because like I said, I don't think he has a super high ceiling. Half PPR leagues, he's going to take a little bit of a hit. Those are just two of the names I want to throw out. And if you didn't see the news, Martavis Bryant is with the Cowboys now. So, maybe if we turn back the clocks 7 years ago, I would care. Don't really care. If you're in super deep leagues and you want to go out and like stash him just like as a hope and a prayer type of thing. I will say that wide receiver 2 spot does seem to be pretty open. We saw Jalen Tolbert being targeted on some key plays last week. I don't think that is something they wanted to do. I don't know how much this really changes anything, but just for people out there who might be running to the waiver wire to pick up Martavis Bryant, the dude hasn't played meaningful football since 2018, I believe. And I also didn't realize this, but he is about to be 32 in December as well. So just want to throw that out there because I'm assuming that's going to start making the rounds here shortly.
Yeah, I think just a few other guys. I mean, if Jamar Chase isn't able to go, then obviously that elevates Tyler Boyd and puts him at probably into a wide receiver 3 type situation. So I do think he is
Yeah.
somebody that's viable. Quentin Johnson, we'll have to see. Obviously last week their offense was terrible overall. I know everybody's victory lapping, after Josh Palmer missed and that, oh well, look, Quentin Johnson still didn't do anything, but I'm like, okay, but nobody did anything. I think he had like 160, 170 yards passing the entire game. Like let's relax, let's give him a little bit of time and see. I'm not saying Quentin Johnson, I think, is going to just explode, but it is a better matchup against the Lions. The Lions are more middle of the road against opposing wide receivers this year. So there is something there. And I think this game could have some fireworks. So Quentin Johnson, I think, is kind of like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 this week, type of flex option. And then we'll have to see what happens with Josh Downs if he's able to play this week. Because if he's not, I think that it would open things up for Isaiah McKenzie in the slot. I think he would be the logical guy that would get to play there. If not, you could also be looking at Alec Pierce as a possible option. We'll have to see on that because the Patriots have struggled against opposing wide receivers this year. They allowed the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year, so that is a good matchup for the Colts. So if Josh Downs it was not able to play this week, then I think you could look at some of those other options there with the Colts passing game because Gardner Minshew has no problems with targeting wide receivers. So, anyways, that being said, be sure to hit that like, subscribe button for future content. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.